In the third year of my marriage with him, I stumbled upon an old post he had written. In it, he described how he and his true love were forced apart, and he had no choice but to marry the neighbor's daughter who had been in love with him for years. And I happened to be that neighbor's daughter. A barrier in a tragic love story, standing between the hero and heroine. The drama unfolded when I went to his office to find Daryl. The elevator doors opened, and immediately, I heard shouting mixed with the sounds of fists hitting flesh. It was Daryl's mother's voice. "Daryl is married. Why did you come back? Your mother stole Daryl's father away. Are you here to steal my son too? You shameless woman." It was the first time I'd seen Daryl's usually dignified mother lose control like this. And Daryl, holding tightly to someone in his arms, as if protecting a rare treasure. I opened my mouth to call his name. But someone suddenly pushed me. My arm hit the corner of a table, and my words turned into a cry of pain. "Ah." Daryl looked over at me, quickly letting go of the person in his arms, as if wanting to come help me. But then he saw his mother pick up a small potted plant. And without hesitation, he turned back to shield that girl again. The pot struck his head directly. In the instant, the blood started dripping down his head. The surrounding sounds grew chaotic. I heard Daryl's mother calling his name in distress, "Daryl." The girl in his arms, sobbing, "Are you okay, Daryl?" And Daryl, in a voice as faint as a sigh, said, "As long as you're okay." The commotion ended with Daryl unconscious, rushed to the hospital. Before I left, he held my hand and softly called out my name one last time, "Mila." Daryl's mother said she would explain everything at home and told me to go to the hospital to check on Daryl. It was already evening when I arrived. Daryl's friend Cole was standing by the door of the hospital room. The moment he saw me, he started to speak. But I gripped his wrist tightly, forcing him to stay silent. The door to the room was ajar. And I could hear inside a girl's voice, playfully pleading. "Just try a bite. I made it just for you." Daryl looked down, sighing lightly, "Vivian, you don't have to." Before he could finish, the young girl's eyes were already glistening with tears, making her look so delicate and pitiful. Daryl stopped talking and obediently swallowed the spoonful of porridge she offered. I didn't miss the quick flash of pain on his face. He'd been burned. Vivian didn't seem like the type who'd know how to take care of someone. Cole tugged at my shirt with his free hand, his face downcast. I let go of his wrist, seeing that a red mark had already formed there. "Sorry." "It's okay." She's Daryl's." "I know." He froze for a moment, as if about to say something else. But the voices in the room suddenly grew louder. Vivian seemed to be crying. "I'm only here because I can't stop worrying about you. You got hurt because of me. Don't I even have the right to care for you? Daryl. We clearly loved each other so much." There was a sound of rustling fabric, as if Daryl was holding her. Then, the voices lowered again, like whispers between lovers. "Mila." Cole called my name again, his voice trembling slightly. "Don't cry." When I touched my cheek, tears were streaming down. How embarrassing. I lowered my head, covering my eyes. "I'll go now. Daryl and I had a whirlwind wedding 3 years ago. I'd just finished school and returned to the country, and my parents threw a welcome home party. Daryl drove to pick me up. Even the calming instrumental music in the car couldn't ease the awkwardness of not seeing each other for 3 years. And the nervousness of being alone with someone I'd secretly loved for so long. We chatted on and off during the drive. But as we neared our destination, my seatbelt suddenly got stuck. I fumbled with it, flustered. Daryl chuckled, leaned over, and unbuckled it for me. The faint scent of sandalwood lingered near me. My body froze. Daryl looked up, noticing my reaction, and gently ruffled my hair. "It's only been a few years. Why are you so distant now? Didn't you say you wanted to marry me when you were little?" Daryl rarely joked like that. My face turned crimson, and my heart felt like it would jump out of my chest. This surreal feeling lasted all through the party. Until he, holding flowers, confessed to me in front of both our families. Under the dazzling lights. The young man I'd held in my heart for over a decade. His eyes bright, his smile warm at the corners of his eyes, said, "I've waited so long for you to come back. Mila." It was like the dream I'd had countless times as a girl. Suddenly come true. At that moment, I thought, I must be the happiest person in the world. Our life after marriage was sweet. Daryl was very attentive. He'd take care of me during my period, stay by my side when I was sick, and constantly watch over me in everyday life. All I could think about was that he treated me so well. So I wanted to be even better to him. It was only later that I found out. He had cultivated that patience and gentleness, bit by bit for Vivian. If it weren't for a friend who stumbled upon his post and shared it with me, I might have stayed in the dark forever. I've fallen for my dad's mistress's daughter. What should I do? I know I shouldn't, but I can't control how I feel. She's so cute, like a child. She always hugs me, saying she wants to be with me forever. When my mom found out, she wouldn't let us be together. When I stayed with W, my mom threatened to kill herself to force us apart. I don't want to hurt my mom. But I don't want W to be sad either. Are you insane? Imagine how much your mom must hurt. I support you. Why should love be separated? My mom pushed too hard. She held a knife, asking me if I wanted W or her. In that moment, I suddenly realized my mom looked so much older. I couldn't go against her. Then what about W? Didn't you say you wanted to be with her forever? Stop hurting your mom. I broke up with W. My mom still wasn't reassured, she pushed me to marry quickly. The neighbor's daughter was coming back from studying abroad. We grew up together, and her mother often said she liked me. My mom told me to marry her. I proposed to the neighbor's daughter. What are you doing? Now you've hurt another person. What about W? She's the one you've hurt the most. The post ended with a response to a question. He said he got married that day. He was now someone else's husband. Someone asked, what about W? Do you still love her? And he answered, yes. The date of that answer was July 14th at 10:15 a.m. The morning of my wedding with Daryl. At 10 a.m., I was sitting in my room, dressed in my beautiful wedding gown, makeup flawless. My best friend stood by the door, ready for the groom to come claim me. At that moment, I thought, I was finally about to marry the man I'd loved for 10 years. How wonderful. That night, Daryl never came home. By the time I finished reading the post, my face was drenched with tears. The air in the room felt thin, leaving me gasping for breath. I thought of stepping outside to the garden for some air. Amid the swaying shadows of the trees, I saw a familiar figure in the distance. Daryl was standing under a streetlight, Vivian looking up at him, the two standing close together. Vivian. We can't do this anymore. I'm already married. She's a good person. I can't hurt her. The dim light softened Vivian's face. She looked like she was about to cry, but tried to hold it in, pretending to be strong. I know. I just can't forget you, that's why I came back. Just working at your company, getting to see you every day, that's already enough. I shouldn't want more. Daryl. I'll keep myself in check. His last sentence came out in a jumbled mess. The instant Vivian's tears began to fall, I could see the deep pain in Daryl's eyes, clear as day. Before he even realized it, he had already pulled Vivian into his arms, comforting her. It was such a familiar sight. Because, back when I cried, he held me just like that, so many times. He'd gently wipe away my tears and soothe me. Every time I felt down, Daryl would give me a gift afterward. Like I was a child. I'd always say, there's no need for that next time. He'd just hold me and smile gently. If it makes you happy, I'll do anything. The wind howled in my ears. But I could still hear my own heart shattering. That day, I went from desperately wanting to rush over and confront Daryl, to crying alone until I couldn't hold it in anymore. And finally, to calmly choosing a different path. Let them be happy together? There's no way the world is that kind. When I left the hospital, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to my parents' house. Mom looked surprised when she opened the door, then smiled. What brings you here all of a sudden? I forced a smile. Just missed you guys, that's all. Mom glanced behind me. Where's Daryl? Didn't he come with you? He's in the hospital. What? He's in the hospital? What happened? He hit his head, but the doctor said it's nothing serious. I left out the part about Daryl's mom. Why aren't you with him? Mom's smile turned a bit sly. She'd always been open-minded, she saw right through my feelings for Daryl, but pretended not to know, while subtly pushing me towards him whenever she could. After all these years of pining, you finally got what you wanted. Hold on tight, okay? No. It's not that. It's far from getting what I wanted. I only just realized. What I thought was good fortune was just Daryl settling for someone since he couldn't marry the one he truly loved. I've liked Daryl ever since I was little. My parents were always busy. When Daryl came home from school and found me waiting for my parents by the door, he'd take me in, help me with my homework, or watch cartoons with me. That night, my parents never came back. I fell asleep in his room while reading comics, only to wake up to a thunderstorm outside. I'd had a nightmare and was terrified by the thunder. Crying for my parents. Daryl rushed in from the next room, even losing a slipper along the way. Mila. My face was covered in tears and snot, and Daryl couldn't hold back a laugh. He grabbed a wet towel to wipe my face, comforting me as he cleaned me up. It's okay, it's okay. It was just a dream. But the more he comforted me, the harder I cried. Eventually, I cried myself to sleep, holding on to Daryl's hand. I remember him standing beside the bed, saying he'd stay with me. Will you always stay with me? I will. Will you stay with me forever and ever? I will. I knew even then that words said offhandedly aren't always trustworthy. But if feelings could be controlled, I wouldn't have fallen for him, chasing him like a moth to a flame for so many years. I didn't go back to visit Daryl at the hospital. When he asked, I just said I was at my parents' house. His head injury wasn't serious. He was discharged within a few days. It happened to be New Year's Day when he came to pick me up for dinner at home. He stood by the door, tall and graceful, his face lighting up with a smile when he saw me. Warm, just like always. Mila, you look beautiful today. Daryl never held back on compliments. In the past, I'd get embarrassed, but over time, I grew more confident. And in turn, I liked him even more. I lowered my gaze, avoiding his eyes. Let's go. Daryl paused for a moment. Then politely said goodbye to my parents. Daryl's mom had calmed down by then, returning to her usual gentle self. She didn't want to discuss that day's incident, and I pretended to have forgotten as well. She looked happy to see me, taking my hand. Mila, I bought some necklaces and bracelets for you. Come try them on. The kitchen is in good hands with the guys. Daryl hung up my coat, smiling, you go ahead with her. The jewelry Daryl's mom bought sparkled under the lights, almost blindingly bright. She helped me try on each piece, complimenting, so perfect. After the last piece, dinner was ready. The atmosphere at the table was warm, but it felt a bit greasy, like something was off. Everyone was hiding something. The moment the doorbell rang, I moved faster than Daryl and opened the door. Standing outside was an unexpected guest. Vivian. It looked like Vivian had hurried over, her forehead slightly damp with sweat. In the brief moment I stood there in shock, Daryl had already come over. Mila. Daryl. The second Vivian saw him behind me, her tears fell. Where did you go? You got discharged without telling me. Do you know how worried I was? I turned to look at Daryl. He kept a calm facade, clearing his throat lightly. Daryl. I looked at him. Who is she? Daryl didn't answer. Vivian pushed past me, rushing over to him. At the table, Daryl's parents had noticed her too. I saw the look on his mother's face change instantly. You. But Daryl's father, sitting beside her, quickly grabbed her shoulder. She's my friend's daughter. She used to be good friends with Daryl. Is that so? I smiled. I've known Daryl for over 10 years. I don't think I've ever met her. Ah, he met her during those years you were studying abroad. I smiled again, letting his lie slide. Well, since you're here, join us for dinner. Daryl's dad said, adding a bowl and chair for Vivian. It was supposed to be a family reunion, but an outsider suddenly appeared. Vivian sat beside Daryl. And right in front of his mom, she kept piling food onto his plate, all affectionate. When she picked up another mushroom to place in his bowl, I stopped her. He doesn't like that. I looked at Vivian calmly, taking away the carrot she'd meant to give him as well. He's allergic to carrots. Vivian's smile froze instantly. The atmosphere grew tense. It's fine. Daryl suddenly spoke up, breaking the awkward silence. As if to prove he really didn't mind, he picked up a shrimp for Vivian. Just like that post mentioned. Vivian's favorite food. Vivian's embarrassment disappeared, replaced by joy. You still remember what I love. Daryl seemed to realize something and picked up food for me, too. Mila, try this. It's good. But I didn't like it. I preferred salt and pepper, braised, or grilled. Anything but plain boiled. I watched as Vivian dipped the shrimp in sauce, biting in with a look of bliss on her face. And then it hit me. The favored ones always have the privilege to take things for granted. Just like Daryl with Vivian. Just like me with Daryl. Suddenly, the food in my mouth felt hard to swallow, and I lost my appetite entirely. I put down my chopsticks. I have something to do tonight. I'll head out now. Where to? Need a ride? Daryl asked. I looked at him, my peripheral vision catching Vivian's hand slowly covering his under the table. No, that's okay. I stood up and left directly. I called a friend to go out drinking. Half drunk, I looked hazily at Lucy as she propped her chin on her hand and asked. What's up? Something bothering you lately? I stayed silent, downing drink after drink. Work's going well, you're gorgeous, and your husband's the guy you've had a crush on for years. Life seems perfect. Mila, with your life set up, if you're not the epitome of success, you're at least fate's favorite. So what's bothering you? I couldn't bring myself to say it. Lucy didn't press, just kept me company in my quiet drinking. I ended up hugging the toilet and vomiting twice in the bathroom, so drunk I was out of it. Knowing nothing else to do, Lucy called Daryl. When Daryl came to the bar to pick me up, I stood like a statue under the lamppost by the entrance. But the moment I saw him, my tears began to fall. Daryl paused, surprised, and pulled a tissue from his pocket. As he wiped my tears, I didn't avoid his touch, just stared at him blankly. You look a lot like someone I like, I said. Daryl chuckled softly. Oh? What's his name? Daryl. He burst into a smile, one that bloomed like a night flower in the dark. I looked at him, my mind swimming with dizziness. I felt an overwhelming urge to pour out my heart. Do you know something? I've liked him for so long. I just never dared to tell him. How long is so long? What year is it again? I asked. Daryl named the year, and I counted on my fingers again and again, until finally, I had it. 10 years. The light from above cast a soft glow on Daryl's tousled hair, making it look almost transparent. His beautiful face froze. You don't believe me? I asked. He shook his head. Annoyed, I grabbed my phone and opened my private album. Still tipsy, I fumbled with the password, entering it wrong several times. The question was from years ago. Who do you like? Such a silly question from my teenage years. I typed in 2 letters. A much younger Daryl's face appeared in the photo. Look at this, I said, tapping on a picture. I found it on the school's website. The photo captured Daryl in the final sprint of a long-distance run. I zoomed in and found myself pushed into the crowd. He was running, and I wanted to give him water, but there were too many people. I couldn't get close, and in the end, he took water from another girl. I sighed. That moment really stung. But later, when I found this photo on the school website, it made me feel better. Even though I couldn't give him the water, we were in the same frame. I laughed, remembering how I'd clutched that water bottle all day like an idiot, just as if I'd bought my favorite cake only to find it squished on the way home. I had been crushed, but the moment I saw this photo, I was full of life again. At least I was recorded in that moment of his victory. And this one? I showed him another photo. I found it in my mom's album. It was from my 10th birthday, when Daryl had come to celebrate with me. We held hands, performing for the adults. Daryl wore a tiny suit, and I had on a fluffy dress, just like a little couple. I even used it as my profile background, I told him. My friends kept saying I looked so cute as a kid. I wondered, if he ever saw it, what he'd think. Would I lie and say it's just because the photo is cute? Or just admit, because I wanted you to see it, or because I like you? But he never did. He never noticed. 10 years is such a long, long time. These little things I've kept inside for so long, they're so clear in my mind. They're endless. In the end, my mouth was dry, but I couldn't finish all my thoughts about this decade-long crush. And when I finished, suddenly he pulled me into his arms. Daryl's embrace was warm, not just through his clothes, but in the heartbeat and the soft rhythm of his emotions beneath them. He held me so tightly. His hand trembled a little. I love you. His breath landed softly by my ear, warm with a slight catch in his voice. Mila. I love you too. In Daryl's arms, my face was dry, and the cold wind sobered me up quite a bit. I looked up into the blinding white light above. For a long, long time. Then I spoke, softly. Liar. Daryl. You're such a liar. When I woke up, my head was splitting. Daryl heard me stir and appeared at the bedroom door. Mila, I made you some hangover soup. I rubbed my temples and nodded. After freshening up, I went to the dining table, where breakfast and the soup were ready. I downed the soup in one go, only to find he'd left a piece of candy beside it. Mila. Daryl came down the stairs, holding a tie, smiling at me. I paused, then took the tie and helped him put it on. Daryl took the chance to lean down and kiss my forehead, murmuring sweetly in my ear, "Wait for me to come back." Just like when we were newlyweds. I was lost in thought for a moment, and by the time I snapped out of it, Daryl was already gone. Not long after he left, a call from an unknown number came through. I answered it, and the voice on the other end sounded familiar. It was Vivian. She wanted to meet up. On the way, I thought about all the ways Vivian might start the conversation. Maybe, like a character in a novel, she'd arrogantly declare, "He only loves me." Or perhaps she'd tell me to back off. But she didn't. Vivian had arrived before me. When we met, she greeted me and began telling me about her and Daryl. I was with Daryl for 2 years, and he was always so good to me. I actually always knew who he was. When I was young, I envied him. He had a happy family, his parents adored him. My mom never cared about me, not until she met Daryl's dad. Sometimes he'd visit, bringing me little gifts. But I knew it was only because he loved my mom. Until I started dating Daryl. He's so caring, always worried if I was eating well, sleeping soundly. He'd tell me, "Don't worry, I'm here," and solve all my problems. It felt like he was a gift from heaven, to make up for all the neglect I'd endured. I thought we'd be together forever. Until his mother found out. She threatened to end her life if he didn't leave me. Vivian's voice trembled as she continued, her tone filled with sudden desperation. "He gave up on me." Her gaze shifted to me, her voice softening with sorrow. "Please, could you give him back to me? Please. I really love him. Really." Tears streamed down her face, landing on the table. She was sobbing, yet she still carried herself with the pride of someone who had once been loved. I said nothing, just touched my own chest. But it didn't hurt like before. "Why don't you just tell Daryl?" I asked. "Ask him to leave me and be with you." Vivian was stunned, a tear frozen on her lashes. I don't want to put him in that position." I smiled, looking at her calmly. "Do you really love Daryl?" "Yes," she answered firmly. But I laughed. "Then tell me, what's Daryl's favorite food?" Vivian fell silent, her mouth opening and closing, unable to utter a word. If they were so in love, why was one hesitating and the other so unaware? Maybe my laughter had provoked her, for Vivian's expression shifted from softness to anger. "Mila. If you insist on doing this, don't blame me. He'll never let me go." Vivian wasn't just talk. When Daryl came home late from work, I noticed the faint peachy scent I'd once smelled on her. I was curled up on the sofa, watching an anime. Daryl changed his shoes and tried to hug me. I dodged. On screen, the female lead was confessing to the male lead, who hesitated. She asked if he loved her. I looked over at Daryl. He was gazing at me, eyes holding only me. Just like when we were kids, and he'd sit with me after school, watching anime as I did my homework. Daryl. I spoke seriously. I always thought, if I got married, it would be to someone I love. Daryl smiled, bending down to scoop me up from the sofa. He looked up at me, his gaze sincere. Mila. I already married the one I love. I lowered my gaze. Liar. Vivian hasn't disappeared from my world, even though Daryl tries his best to keep things calm on the surface. But she's getting more and more outrageous. In the middle of the night, Daryl's phone rang, waking me from my sleep. When I opened my eyes, I saw him hurriedly putting on his clothes. Noticing that I was awake, he looked apologetic. Sorry, Mila. I didn't mean to wake you. I have to go out for a bit, he said, adding, just go back to sleep. I nodded, lying in bed, watching as he left the room. Downstairs, I heard the door close with a bang. Now fully awake, I realized I had overheard something, Vivian's voice. She was crying softly, her tone fragile, saying there was someone outside her room knocking on her door and window. I'm so scared, she said. Daryl, could you come stay with me? I'm really afraid. Even a child knows that when you're in trouble, you call the police. But she chose to call someone else's husband. The day the weather forecast predicted the first snow, Daryl and I had made dinner plans. When I went to his office at noon to meet him, he looked hesitant. Daryl? I asked. Today, I have a friend visiting from abroad. I haven't seen them in years, he said. I might not be able to make it tonight. That's fine, I replied. Daryl smiled, but I could read a sense of relief on his face. I'll pick you up tonight. Where will you be? He asked. I gave him an address, and he nodded. I headed to a restaurant downtown by the floor-to-ceiling windows. A pianist played in the main hall, the music flowing like a gentle stream. Although it had been years, my friend Zoe and I picked up right where we left off, chatting nonstop over our meal. As evening fell, the snow began to drift down in soft flakes. Zoe looked outside with delight. I just got back, and it's already snowing. My luck is amazing, she exclaimed. I smiled and glanced out over the square. There were quite a few people walking along the streets, and several couples holding hands. Amid the falling snow, a girl suddenly leaned in and kissed her boyfriend. Watching them, I froze. The restaurant was warm, yet I suddenly felt as if I were plunged into ice, my whole body stiffening. What's wrong? Zoe followed my gaze. When she saw the kissing couple, her expression softened with understanding, and she laughed. They say that couples who kiss on the first snow will be happy together forever, she teased. Mila, are you missing your husband? She asked. Thank you for spending such a romantic evening with me. I fell silent, my gaze lingering on the affectionate couple as they finally parted, arm in arm, strolling down the snowy street. After a long pause, I said, That's my husband. I saw Daryl's message when I landed. I had missed several calls and unread messages. Judging by the timing, it was likely the middle of the night back home. In the past, he'd always get anxious when he couldn't reach me. I had applied for this business trip right after saying goodbye to Zoe, without even packing, so I knew I wouldn't be home for a while. I replied to Daryl, letting him know I was on a business trip. His response came instantly, That's good. Come back soon. But Vivian was quicker than I expected. The very next day, she sent me a photo, a mirror selfie in our bathroom, wrapped in a towel. I quickly saved it before she deleted it. Stop wasting your energy. I'm not going to ask for a divorce. You'd be better off putting in the effort with Daryl. By the time the project wrapped up, more than 2 weeks had passed. My life was gradually returning to normal. On the day I flew back, Daryl was at the airport to pick me up. We hadn't seen each other in weeks, yet it felt as if a thick wall stood between us. He did most of the talking during the drive, while I replied absent-mindedly, focused on my phone, responding to messages from colleagues. Mila. Daryl's voice was hesitant. Is there anything that's been bothering you lately? I was just about to answer when his phone rang unexpectedly, and he accidentally hit speaker. In the confined space of the car, Vivian's voice came through clearly, slurring slightly as she murmured Daryl's name. Daryl. I'm at the bar, and I think I drank too much. Could you come pick me up? My head's spinning, my legs feel weak, and someone keeps staring at me. When I looked up, I caught Daryl's tense expression in the rearview mirror. Sorry, he started. Go ahead, I interrupted, meeting his gaze calmly in the mirror. Mila. Daryl tried to explain. I know. A friend's daughter, I replied flatly. I opened the car door and got out. I need to stop by the office anyway. Go pick her up. Daryl returned sooner than I expected, just as I finished moving my belongings from the master bedroom to the guest room. Mila, I dropped her off and came back right away. What are you doing? He asked, bewildered. I'm moving out, I replied. I haven't been sleeping well lately. We should sleep separately for now. I became busier with work, often coming home late. Daryl would wait up, keeping the lights on until I returned. Each time I walked through the door, he'd ask, Are you hungry? Do you want a late-night snack? I'd shake my head and head straight to my room without chatting. I could feel Daryl's gaze on my back, confused and a bit hurt, but I had no desire to expend any more energy on him or Vivian. This continued until we attended a banquet together. I clung to his arm, mingling with the guests. Thanks to him, I met some potential clients. Introducing me, he would say, This is my wife. People would compliment us, saying we made a great couple, and I'd lean slightly on his shoulder, smiling shyly. You two look so in love, someone commented. I just smiled. After the banquet, as soon as we got in the car, I pulled my hand away from Daryl's arm. He looked bewildered, his hand frozen midair. Mila, he murmured, but when he saw my calm, indifferent expression, he fell silent. I leaned back against the car window, exhausted. Why, don't you sit in the front seat anymore? He asked. I massaged my temples, giving a dismissive reply, I just don't feel like it. The rest of the ride home was silent. I changed my shoes and headed to my room. Mila. Daryl's voice stopped me. How's your insomnia? Has it gotten any better? Without looking back, I answered, No. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand tightly, his fingers trembling. Mila. His voice was raw with desperation. Please tell me. Tell me what's wrong. Why did you start sleeping in a separate room as soon as you came back? Why are you coming home later and later? Why do you act affectionate in public but won't even talk to me at home? Why? It's like you don't love me anymore. Let go. I spoke calmly, and he released his grip. My wrist was already reddened, and I rubbed it to ease the ache. Is there something you'd like to admit? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. What? He replied, confused. I held his gaze for a long moment. Like, I said slowly. Kissing someone you love on the first snow is supposed to bring happiness forever? Daryl's face paled, his posture shrinking as he whispered, You saw. Vivian had chosen the most conspicuous spot. It was hard not to see, I replied, forcing a smile that was more painful than tears. Daryl. My voice was soft, but my words cut deep. When I was drunk that night and told you I'd loved you for 10 years, you hugged me and said you loved me too. But is that the same feeling you had when you told someone online you loved Vivian 2 years ago? It's not the same, he protested. He quickly spoke up, trying to explain. I smiled and closed the bedroom door in his face, not letting him finish. I no longer needed an answer. Daryl. I never mentioned divorce to Daryl. Instead, he was treating me better and clinging to me more than ever. He made breakfast before work, picked me up afterward, bought me flowers, my favorite treats, and all kinds of high-end gifts he thought I'd like. My colleagues would sometimes tease, Mila, what's your secret to having such a loving husband? I'd just smile. Sometimes, when Vivian called, he'd subtly hang up on her. Vivian showed up one day out of nowhere. It was at that same cafe. This time, she'd lost all her composure, with none of the arrogant defiance she once had toward me. What did you do? Vivian stared me down, clutching her cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. I took a small sip of coffee and smiled at her. I didn't do anything. All I did was remind him of how much I once loved him. And then, I left. Why should I divorce him to give them what they wanted? Wouldn't it be better if he couldn't have me, and she couldn't have him? Mila. He doesn't love you. He loves me. Me. Vivian lost it, screaming at me, her voice loud but lacking real conviction. Is that so? I put down my coffee and stood up. Then go convince Daryl to divorce me. Can you do that, Vivian? Daryl invited me out for a Valentine's Day date. I agreed, choosing a restaurant that would be hard to forget. When Daryl arrived, I saw a flash of unease on his face, but he quickly covered it up. He set down a gift box. I saw this a while ago, it suits you. Thank you. I opened it to find an expensive pink diamond necklace. Sorry, I've been so busy lately. I didn't have time to get you a gift sooner. It's fine. Daryl gave a warm, almost apologetic smile. Just having you here today is the best gift. His words were cut off by red wine splashing down on him. His white shirt was stained, red droplets fell from his hair onto the table, and I tapped my phone to start recording, aiming the camera at her. Daryl. Vivian's wine glass shattered on the floor. Her voice was sharp and desperate. You're spending Valentine's Day with her. Why didn't you respond to my messages? Have you fallen for her? Tell me, is it true? Daryl stayed silent, standing up to take a towel from a waiter and wiping the wine off his face. Curious onlookers surrounded us from all sides. I sat calmly in my seat, watching this spectacle. Sorry. Ignoring her, Daryl turned to me. Mila, we had a bit of an incident. The waitstaff had already stepped in to stop Vivian. Don't be upset. I'll make it up to you. Mila. Vivian's eyes suddenly shifted to me. You planned this. You did this on purpose. You wanted me here, just to make a fool of me. Her rage grew as she grabbed a bottle from the table and hurled it at me. In a flash, someone shielded me. The heavy thud of impact was unsettling. Daryl had pulled me into his arms. I could hear his heartbeat pounding louder and louder. But my face remained expressionless. Vivian stood there, restrained, hands still in mid-throw. Daryl turned around and slapped her, swift and forceful. I haven't changed my heart. Vivian. She's my wife. Gasps echoed from the crowd as someone muttered, calling Vivian insane. She dared to act out in front of the wife, knowing she was just the mistress. Vivian stared at Daryl, her face pale, tears streaming down. The scene finally ended when the staff escorted her out. I had lost my appetite, and Daryl looked a mess. So we left. While waiting outside for a car, Daryl apologized. Sorry, Mila. I wanted us to have a nice evening, but it ended up like this. If you're free, maybe we could try again tomorrow. I'm busy tomorrow. I cut him off. The air between us suddenly felt thin. I replayed a snippet of the recording. When I looked up, I found Daryl watching me. The dark stain on his shirt still showed, and his hair hung down, casting his deep, upturned eyes in shadow. There was a hint of red at the corner of his eye, his voice breaking as he said, "Why aren't you angry?" I'd known Daryl for over 20 years. I'd followed him around for more than 10. He'd always been calm, composed, and endlessly kind. Like an older brother I could rely on. He took a step closer, grabbing my wrist gently, almost afraid to hold on too tightly. He loomed over me like a glass tower on the verge of collapse. She said you sent her the address. Mila. Why aren't you angry? Can you blame me? Just once. Yell at me. Hit me. Argue with me. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Please. He leaned his head on my shoulder, and I felt a faint dampness. Please, Mila. Anything, just don't leave me. The late winter wind was still chilly on my face. I was enveloped in the scent of his sandalwood cologne. His hold was so tight. His warm breath crept down my collar. But I kept my stiff, unmoving posture, like a mannequin. Daryl refused to let go. I knew he was waiting for me to say something. But I stayed silent. The next morning, Daryl acted as if nothing had happened, getting up early to make me breakfast. I was in a hurry and didn't eat it. After I got to work, he sent me breakfast delivery. When my colleague came into my office, she looked over and said, "Mila, can you even finish all this?" I smiled and asked, "Hungry? Want some?" Her eyes lit up. Thanks, Mila. As she reached for it, she noticed a note attached to the box. Daryl had left a message, reminding me to eat well. Just as she was about to say something, I took the note off and tossed it away. She immediately closed her mouth and quietly ate. Daryl came to pick me up after work, as if he had no job of his own. His car parked at the entrance, and my coworkers couldn't hide their envy, saying I had the perfect husband. I waved goodbye to them and got into the back seat. Daryl handed me a warm drink. I heard you cough a bit yesterday. Thanks. I took it and placed it by the car door. We acted as if nothing had happened, keeping up a polite facade until we got home. When we reached the door, Daryl didn't follow right away. Only when I reached the front steps did he catch up, carrying the thermos he'd given me earlier. Oh. Sorry. I left it by the side door and forgot about it. Daryl didn't respond, just stood there at the bottom of the steps, looking up at me. He was backlit, his face hidden in shadow, unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke. Mila. You haven't mentioned divorce, because you still care about me. Right? I shifted my gaze away from his face, looking into empty space. You're wrong. I answered with a smile. Why did he have to push me? Why force me to spell it out, that I didn't love him anymore? Why tear away the mask of adult civility, hiding all the ties and entanglements? The love I'd once had for Daryl died the day I read that post. Without love, marriage or divorce was merely a calculation of benefits. In the end, without interest in anyone else, staying married to Daryl offered me the most advantage. The connections, the resources Daryl could provide, were the reasons I stayed. Businessmen chase profit. If love requires sincerity free of any interests, then once love fades, all that remains with Daryl is calculation. I looked at Daryl and smiled. My gaze didn't waver. I'm just putting things to their best use. Don't you get it? Daryl. Our marriage lost its love long ago. All that's left is the semblance of harmony masking estranged calculations, remorseful attempts to appease. A relationship held together solely by the cold framework of the law. Daryl stumbled back slightly. I thought he'd get angry. That he'd lose his temper. But he didn't. Instead, he seemed to take a deep breath, forcefully swallowing all his emotions. His voice was soft. It was like the flutter of a butterfly's wings, so delicate it seemed it could snap at the lightest touch. It's fine. It's fine. As long as you don't mention divorce. For now, I won't. I smiled, mercilessly snapping the butterfly's wings. But if I meet someone who moves me again, I can't say for sure. No. You can't. Daryl's composure shattered instantly. You can't do this. I love you. You can't love anyone else. Mila. I had no interest in watching him lose control. I opened the front door and walked inside. Daryl. Don't go mad. Love isn't something you can control. But there's no reason to keep clinging after being hurt. The 10 years I spent silently loving Daryl were real. But no one knows better than I do. Before you love someone else, you need to love yourself first. If I'd truly loved him to the point of losing all reason, I wouldn't have chosen my future without hesitation when I went abroad. The path of love is rough, it's easy to stumble. But I'll always have the courage to love again and the resolve not to look back. Because the person I love most is always myself. Epilogue. Daryl, burning with fever, called Mila. Call after call, all he heard was a busy tone. Sorry, the number you dialed is currently busy. He'd hang up, call again, hang up, call again. He just couldn't get through. In his fevered haze, his phone slipped from his hand onto the floor. He didn't even know if his last call went through. When he woke up, he was in the hospital. Daryl blinked at the white walls, dazed for a long time. Suddenly, someone spoke next to him. You're awake. It was Mila. She reached out, feeling his forehead for temperature, then poured him a glass of water. For a moment, Daryl thought he was dreaming. Until he felt the cold touch on his forehead. He tried to speak, but his throat burned. Taking the water from Mila, he drank, and felt a bit better. It had been a long time since he'd seen this side of Mila. At home, the two of them were like strangers sharing an apartment. Even when Mila's attitude was gentle, he knew it was just the courtesy one extends to an acquaintance. Mila. He spoke quickly, wanting to ask if she'd gotten his calls. If she'd brought him to the hospital. If she'd stayed by his bedside for a long time. But before he could finish, Mila interrupted, "Are you hungry? What would you like to eat?" "Pork rib soup." He said it on purpose. Back when Mila was sick, he'd always make pork rib soup for her. Eventually, Mila had insisted on learning to make it herself, saying that when he fell ill, she could take care of him in turn. He'd finally given in and taught her. He mentioned it now, hoping to stir something in her. But Mila didn't miss a beat on her phone screen, only nodded. "I placed the order. It should be here soon." Daryl froze for a moment. He'd hoped she'd make it for him herself. Mila stood up. "If you need anything, just press the call button. The food will be here shortly." Daryl stared at her, momentarily lost. "Where are you going?" "I have a meeting in the afternoon, so I'll be heading out." With a slight nod, Mila walked towards the door. Daryl wanted to call after her. The lingering fever muddled his mind. He reached out and caught the hem of Mila's shirt. Mila looked back at him. "Could you stay with me?" He knew he'd said the wrong thing because Mila's expression changed instantly. But she maintained her composure. "Sorry, the meeting is important." What meeting could be more important than a sick person? He wanted to ask her. He wanted to say, "You didn't used to be like this." He wanted to remind her that she'd once promised to take good care of him. He even wanted to say, you said, that you loved me." But he couldn't say a word. The last shreds of his reason reminded him that he was the one to blame for ruining everything. He released her shirt. "Sorry." "Go on, then." In the beginning, Daryl thought it was fine as long as they hadn't divorced. As long as they were still married, he still had time to win Mila back. After all, she used to love him so deeply. But later, he realized he'd been wrong. Mila didn't accept his attempts at reconciliation. In public, they still acted like a loving couple, but behind closed doors, they were polite cohabitants. Mila never ate the breakfast Daryl prepared. When he gave her gifts, she occasionally reciprocated, but her return gifts seemed hastily chosen, devoid of thought. He thought it was okay, that one day he'd win her over. But the more he tried, the colder she became. Returning from a party or his parents' house was always the hardest for Daryl. The contrast hit the hardest then. The smile that had just graced her face would vanish as she slipped her hand out of his, the warmth lingering in his arm fading away. He'd argued before. He'd broken down countless times. He'd let Mila curse him, he'd gripped her hand, begging her, even slapping himself. He'd looked at her with red-rimmed eyes, pleading for her to hate him. But Mila simply pulled her hand free, sighing softly. "Don't make a fuss." Her gaze was calm. And he felt like a criminal laid bare. From beginning to end, he'd been the one making a scene. It was then he understood. Remorse and anguish meant nothing. Mila would never turn back. So he kept telling himself, as long as Mila didn't divorce him, it would be enough. Even if she was just using him, just calculating against him, even if there was no love, that would be fine. As long as she was willing to stay by his side, to remain his wife in name, it was enough. But that promise of hers hovered above him like a sword, always threatening to fall. He never knew when it would drop. And he was constantly haunted by the fear of that moment. What he couldn't bear, the thing he feared most, was the thought of her loving someone else. Daryl stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Mila didn't come the second day. When he finally returned home, Mila was nowhere to be found. He sent her a message, and hours later got a reply saying she was on a business trip. The last time they'd spoken had been half a month ago. Daryl had asked if she was free. He had 2 tickets to a musical from a friend. "I don't enjoy musicals, sorry." He'd stared at that message for a long time. She used to go with him. Afterward, they'd walk back together, Mila's hand on his arm, her steps light. Daryl would look at her and smile. Today was great. It wasn't the musical that made her happy. It was being together. Daryl hesitated, typing and deleting his message in the chat for a while, finally sending. "I'm out of the hospital. After a moment, he retracted it and replaced it with "Safe travels." There was no reply. Daryl sighed and set down his phone. The city buzzed in the evening, lights shining from every home. People were returning from work, the smell of food wafting through the air, accompanied by the laughter of families. Daryl didn't turn on the lights. He sat alone in the dark. Suddenly, he felt the emptiness of his home. He'd never noticed it before. When Mila wasn't busy, she liked curling up on the sofa to watch anime. It seemed like a habit he had picked up when she stayed at his place before. After Mila came back from studying abroad, he once felt she had matured, that she was somewhat unfamiliar to him. But soon he realized she hadn't changed at all. She still loved watching anime, still called him brother, laughed out loud when she was happy, and could be easily cheered up when she was sad. In truth, Daryl was glad. At the office, Mila was sharp and capable. Everyone praised her independence. But only he knew. His little girl could still be playful, watch kids' anime, and laugh and cry over the characters. Only he knew. He used to feel an immense satisfaction. Only he knew this side of Mila. The night Mila returned from her business trip. She hadn't told him her arrival time. It was by chance that Daryl ran into her downstairs. He saw Mila standing face to face with another man. The two were chatting, and Mila had an expression he hadn't seen in ages, lively and radiant. The man, with a typically indifferent look, seemed to soften in Mila's presence, his gaze subtly gentle. Even though they weren't standing close, there was a natural harmony between them, a sense of exclusivity that no outsider could intrude upon. Daryl suddenly felt a surge of anger. A pang of bitterness he couldn't identify filling his chest. It even made him want to rush over and punch the man in the face. But he knew that would make Mila angry. He wanted to walk over, wrap his arm around her shoulder, and declare, "Thank you for bringing my wife back." But his feet were glued to the spot, unable to move. Beyond the anger, a wave of panic hit him even harder. The sword was hanging by a thread. Could it be him? That man. Could it be him? Mila said goodbye and turned to walk in his direction. Before his mind could react, Daryl's body had already turned, heading home. When Mila opened the door, he was waiting with a pale face and forced a smile at her. He chose to avoid the confrontation. While Mila was in the shower, he checked her chat history. He knew it was despicable, but he couldn't help it. He just couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept the idea of Mila loving someone else. Mila's phone still had the same pattern password as before, it hadn't changed, and he unlocked it easily. At the top was her friend, Lucy. He opened the chat and glanced through it. "Lucy. Hurry up and divorce, please. I feel like stabbing your husband twice, just from looking at him." Mila replied with a laughing emoji. "What type do you like? I'll introduce someone to you. Lars isn't bad, you know. He's liked you for quite a while now." Mila replied with another emoji. Daryl exited the chat and found Lars's account. Mila's note was simple, just Lars, with nothing suggesting intimacy. He opened the chat, and the latest message was from Mila. "Thanks for dropping me off." Lars had replied politely. "It's no trouble." The sound of water running in the bathroom continued. Daryl scrolled furiously through their messages. They had been chatting frequently. Mostly about work, with the occasional restrained show of concern. Both of them had been careful to stay within boundaries, no one crossed the line. In his dazed state, a new message from Lars popped up. "I managed to get 2 tickets for the XX exhibition." Daryl knew XX too. It was Mila's favorite anime. He could already guess what Lars would say next. Driven by anger, he nearly wanted to reply, "No, you can't." But the next message popped up. And it wasn't "let's go together." Instead, it said, "Feel free to go with a friend." Daryl stood frozen. He would have preferred if their chat had been full of flirtatious, suggestive words. Or if Lars, knowing she was married, had still invited her, deliberately crossing the line. Or even if Mila, in a fit of resentment, had decided to cheat to get back at him. That way, at least, they would be even, and he wouldn't hold her faults against her. As long as they could go back to the way things were. But the more they kept their distance, the uglier he felt. The more they stayed respectful, the more he saw himself as despicable. Look, he thought, only he had done anything wrong. Only he was the disgraceful one. Maybe Mila realized he had looked at her phone, but she didn't confront him. Daryl spent every day in trepidation. The feeling that he was losing her grew stronger and stronger, and he was powerless to stop it. No matter how kind he was to Mila, it was like throwing a pebble into the sea, with no response in return. On a bright, sunny afternoon, Mila brought up divorce. She came with the divorce papers, sitting across from him, smiling calmly. Let's get divorced. It had finally fallen. In that moment, the sword hanging above his head fell, slicing through him from top to bottom. His heart, now on the left half of his body, beat slower and slower. And blood spilled everywhere. It was as if he was truly experiencing the pain of a heart attack. Of death. Even breathing became difficult. Is it him? It took him a while to find his voice again. But it sounded shrill, unlike his own. Who? Lars. Did you fall in love with him? Is that it? Ah. Mila was briefly surprised, then shook her head. No, I didn't fall in love with him. I just wanted to give him a chance. Mila smiled. To give myself a chance, and him one too. After all. She looked at him, her smile deepening. Before starting a new relationship, isn't it necessary to close off the old one completely? Daryl felt as if something had gripped his throat. He wanted to tear the divorce agreement in front of him into pieces. But after a long while, he simply said, I understand. I'll sign the divorce papers after I review them. Mila was momentarily surprised, then genuinely smiled, pleased. Good, I'll wait for you. He wanted to cling to her. But he feared she would be annoyed. So let it be. At least, in the end, he would leave her with a decently graceful exit. Daryl made some adjustments to the divorce agreement, giving most of the assets to Mila. She called him to ask. It's compensation. The person on the other end chuckled, not saying anything. That was just an excuse. He only wanted to leave her with a good impression at their final parting. Even though things had already fallen apart between them. The day they picked up the divorce certificates, Mila arrived alone, and left alone as well. As Daryl stood by the door, he asked, should I give you a ride? Mila shook her head and said calmly, I'll walk. Lucy is waiting for me. Daryl watched her silhouette grow smaller as she walked away. Until she disappeared from sight. It was a perfectly nice day. But he just felt terrible. Utterly, utterly terrible. He had wanted to ask her a question. Had she ever resented him? But in truth, there was no need to ask. She wouldn't care. Perhaps she'd never waste her time on something so pointless. Like the year he brought fruit over to Mila's house. Only to overhear her mother asking. Have you made up your mind? Are you really going abroad? What about the person you like? Are you willing to leave him? Mila had laughed then, her youthful voice sweet and bright. Mom. If it doesn't involve my family. Then to me, my future has never been a multiple choice question. She had always been this resolute. And,